Thank you for coming out for the first of many in terms of conversations around the superintendent search. We wanted to have this one early. We are literally in the beginning stages of our search process. We have not even, the request for proposal for search firms has actually just gone out. So we are in the beginning stages of this. These hearings are extremely important. In the past, what we've done is actually taken comments that we got from our community and put in the actual job description for the superintendent search. So the comments tonight are going to be recorded. So I would ask that you speak into the mic, that you also state your name, and also this is just your opportunity to talk about the process, but also to speak to us about some of the qualities that you will want to see in a superintendent. Once we engage the search firm, we anticipate a vigorous community engagement process. We have talked about having members of the community, particularly parents, engaged in the search process and interviewing superintendent candidates. But like I said, we are in the beginning of that process, and it starts tonight, so to speak. So I want to thank you all for coming. There are some that have signed up. If there is ample time, if there are those that are here that did not sign up, I will open it up briefly at the end for those who may have missed the cutoff. I'll ask each person to take about 3 minutes just to give your thoughts. If you don't have a speakers list, there is one at the table there. And with that said, we'll begin with our first speaker, which is Howard Eagle. Howard here? Okay, I'll call him back up. And forgive me if I mispronounce the name. Santosha Kuykendall? Santosha, how do you say your last name? Kuykendall. Okay.
Thank you for convening this session. It is very important for parents to have a chance to talk about what we're looking for. And I wish I had more advice to give you, actually. I know that a lot of parents are looking for someone who's a collaborator and someone who will work with the teachers instead of in conflict with them, and someone who seeks community input. And I think all of that is very, very important. I wish I knew how to tell you that when someone sits across from you at an interview table that you have found that person. I don't. I'm hoping that someone else will have those answers. What I am here to ask you to do is to ask hard and specific questions about the job. That the people skills, the soft skills are a huge part of what we're looking for, but that I think there needs to be a certain amount of clarity about the job description that may not have been there with the previous superintendent. And one example of this is that when I heard Superintendent Brizard say that he considered himself to be the superintendent for all the children in Rochester, I was shocked by this because I wasn't sure that that was what he had been hired to do, in part at least because I wondered whether that meant that he was also the superintendent for the children who were attending Harley but living in Rochester, for instance. And I think that to a certain degree, we need to be clear on whose needs it is that the superintendent is here to address and how those needs fit in with the accountability and the answerability of the institutions that he is working with. And so while I support the idea of bringing everybody who is involved in the Rochester community to the table, and also of collaborating and recognizing the existence and the importance of private and charter schools, I think we also need to focus on the fact that our superintendent only has control over district schools, that he cannot tell private school superintendents to share their resources differently from how they are, private school principals to share their resources differently from how they are doing this, that he cannot tell charter school principals to change their admissions procedures. And so I think his first priority needs to be to focus on the students that he can actually, whose education is actually squarely in his hands, and from there to collaborate with people who are not sending their children to city schools or who are educating children who are not under his control. And I would encourage you to, again, to ask him hard questions about this and to provide him or her, the candidates, with a very clear job description that includes who feedback should come from and whose interests are to be served first and foremost, and not to restrict the hard questions to that, to also ask, of course, about relationships with teachers and how we are going to get ineffective teachers out of the classroom without punishing effective teachers, and how we are going to, and I think I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Santosha. Did Howard come back up? Mr. Eagle? And Mr. Eagle will be followed by Mr. Smith.
Mr. Smith is on his way.
Okay.
I didn't realize we were restricted to 3 minutes.
Well, that's just the guideline. If you want to go over a little bit, that's fine.
Okay, because I don't normally read to adults. I know adults don't like to be read to, but I wanted to read an official statement from the Community Education Task Force regarding our position as it relates to the Rochester City School District's permanent superintendent selection process. I should say, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to address you in what we hope will be an ongoing process for determining the manner in which we choose the next permanent superintendent. And of course, I'm speaking as a parent, I'm speaking as a former teacher, I'm speaking as a local, state, and federal taxpayer, and also as a member of the Community Education Task Force. Our official position is as follows. During early May 2011, the task force sent several emails, you might remember, to all board members requesting that they meet with us to discuss development of a process to include adequate and credible parent and community input into the decision-making process that will be used to select Rochester's next superintendent of schools. Several board members, including Commissioners Campos, Elliott, and Cruz, did not respond to our repeated requests at all. Board President Evans, Commissioners White, and Powell did respond, but for all practical intents and purposes, declined to meet with us. The only board member who agreed to meet with CETF regarding this matter is Commissioner Alan Williams. We met with Commissioner Williams on May 17, 2011, the day after the majority of the board voted to approve the $175,000 contract with interim superintendent Bohan Vargas, without, according to Commissioner Williams, having the benefit of reviewing the contract prior to approving it. For the majority of the board to have allegedly voted to approve a contract without having the benefit of reviewing it prior to approval is very disturbing and indicative of the type of continued lack of accountability which has led to the current dysfunctional state of affairs regarding the board's inability to provide effective, appropriate leadership. On May 17th, our May 17th meeting with Commissioner Williams was very productive. We discussed and agreed on the following. First point is that the interim superintendent selection process was not appropriate, especially since allegedly board members didn't have an opportunity to review the details of the $175,000 contract prior to approving it. Second point, considering the current fiscal crisis faced by the Rochester City School District, the board's failure to recoup unwarranted compensation from former Superintendent Brizard and past results, it does not make sense, nor is it necessary or feasible to hire a search firm, typically at the cost of at least $100,000 to find a new superintendent. If a search firm is used, which should not be the case, parents in the broader community should have substantial and credible input into deciding the specific type of firm that is chosen. The local business community and the mayor, this is the next point, the local business community and the mayor's office have expressed expectations of having representation in the search process. In addition to board members, the business community, and mayor's office, constituents from various other sectors of the community must also have representation in the search process, including, but not necessarily exclusively, parents, teachers, and representatives of local religious communities. The next point is an open and fair democratic process must be established by which various constituencies, particularly parents, select their own representatives as opposed to having them arbitrarily appointed or selected by the board or others. The entire community needs to be informed regarding the board's criteria for selecting a superintendent. And the last point is that the board president needs to publicly clarify whether or not the interim superintendent will be allowed to apply for the permanent position. Commissioner Williams informed us during our May 17th meeting that he plans to develop and present a formal proposal to the board, which will include all the points outlined above. He also informed us that based on our ongoing work, he supports the Community Education Task Force having representation in a permanent superintendent selection process. CETF is composed of Rochester City School District parents, grandparents, relatives, and taxpaying community members, some of whom have been involved in efforts to help bring about widespread fundamental change and improvement within the Rochester City School District for decades. Some Rochester Board of Education commissioners have made statements that seem to indicate that they want to hurry up and fill the permanent superintendent position. We caution against rushing through this process. In fact, based on the last permanent selection process and recent events, we believe that it is critically important for the board to take the necessary time to develop and implement a well-thought-out, open, fair, inclusive, democratic process that includes equitable input, participation, cooperation, and collaboration between all stakeholders. We didn't make the following part of our official position, but we've expressed the ideas publicly in terms of what we believe a criteria should be included in the criteria. Of course, we understand that we're not in a position to dictate, but we have said that we think that a successful candidate should be a local candidate or at least someone from the region. And the idea behind that is that this type of candidate would be more likely to buy into staying for the long haul. Secondly, we think that the person needs to be an experienced master teacher with extensive instructional knowledge and a keen understanding of instructional practice and research-based education reform practices and methodologies. Thirdly, we think that the person must possess the demonstrated ability to build consensus with educators and labor. And next point is the person needs to be accessible with a demonstrated ability to work in partnership with diverse groups of urban parents. Meaningful, ongoing parent and community involvement and input must be a valuable part of a democratic partnership in decision-making within the district. The next point is that the person must demonstrate unquestionable integrity and be trustworthy and honest, which would be delivered through an open and frequent communication with schools, parents, and the broader Rochester community. And the last point is that the person must represent the needs of all Rochester City School District students and families and subscribe to democratic principles as opposed to corporate agendas and mayoral control ideologies. Now, I was thinking, if I was a PhD, I might match up with that criteria. Because some people think that having a PhD should be part of the criteria. But then come to think of it, the last superintendent didn't have a PhD. But don't worry, I'm not interested in the position, not to worry.
You can apply.
But I am interested, along with several other people, in being supervisors of the person who acquires that position. Now, speaking of the last superintendent, his sudden departure created really a historic opportunity after 3 years of upheaval and chaos for us to finally collaborate in an authentic process and engage all the stakeholders in a collaborative process to really get focused on producing the change, the fundamental change and improvement that our students and families so richly deserve. I thank you for giving me the time to make this statement, and I do have copies that I would like to have entered, please, and we would like to have entered into the official record. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You can hand those to the clerk. Is Wallace Smith here yet?
He's on his way, literally. He should be.
Avery Blackman. Good evening.
Good evening.
Evening.
To the commissioner, board members, and the community at large, we would like to thank you for an opportunity to express our sentiments. I am coming from a urban community perspective in reference to the needs of a different type of leadership to address some of the core issues of our students. So imagine if there was a viable candidate that registered some of the qualities that Mr. Eagle just laid out for us. And imagine if that valuable candidate was a native of Rochester. And imagine if that valuable candidate was also a student in the Rochester City School District from kindergarten through 12th grade. And imagine if that candidate had prior experience, administrative experience, in leading some of the schools and programs in the Rochester City School District. And imagine that valuable candidate being a current superintendent as we speak, with various superintendent experience in certain parts of our nation. So when we talk about bringing someone here that may have local ties and have the experience, I submit to the urban community that that valuable candidate does exist. But more importantly than bringing or hiring the next superintendent, I submit this and suggest this to the urban community. We have to do a better job in assisting the district in addressing and redressing the many challenges facing the Rochester City School District in terms of a large number of students at the secondary level entering school buildings unprepared and unwilling to be students. Our elected officials have been elected to hire the superintendent, and they have vast experience because we've been down this road several times within the past decade. But in the meantime, it is essential that the urban community stop neglecting our responsibility in the process of education, which flows in the following manner: home, community, then school. If our babies are not getting the support services they need at home, then it is the responsibility of the community, not teachers alone, not commissioners alone, but community. So as we strive to move from symbolism to substance, I would encourage the urban community to stop playing games with our babies because they're not ignorant. There's a crisis in this district, and it has very little to do with the next superintendent. It is negligence on our part for not intervening and demanding that our babies come to school prepared and willing to be a student. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you, Mr. Blackman. Bishop Willie Davis. Bishop Willie Davis here. Mia Hodgins.
Good evening, everybody. I want to read a few excerpts from the actual Rochester City School Board Policy Manual. Recruitment of the superintendent. The Board of Education recognizes that the recruitment and appointment of the superintendent of schools is among the most important priorities of the board. Through its employment policy, the board will attempt to attract, secure, and retain a qualified superintendent. The selection program will be based upon finding an individual who will devote him or herself to the education and welfare of the children attending the district schools and the efficient and responsible administration of the school system. The board will establish a search committee or hire a consultant to recruit and interview candidates for the position of superintendent. The committee, if not experienced in the recruitment of administrative personnel, will undergo training so that the process may be conducted in an efficient manner. Final selection shall rest with the board. Recruiting procedures shall enable the district to seek qualified candidates from a variety of sources. Now, while I understand it is your job and among the most important priorities to select the next superintendent, your own policy allows for a search committee to be someone other than a consultant or hiring someone outside of this area. We can't afford it. we have a deficit, a budget deficit, and you're going to spend money on a recruiter? That doesn't make any sense. So I call for the board to establish a search committee that's composed of parents, educators, board members, and the community. You should not feel threatened by the establishment of this committee. You should feel blessed that you have a constituency of individuals here that want to help you and are looking out for the best for all of us in our community. It's also your policy that allows for the recruiting procedures to seek qualified candidates from a variety of sources. And again, I beg for you not to overlook our local talent. Rochester is a center for education and innovation. We have a lot of great qualified people here that I think that maybe a search committee from outside of this region would overlook. And therefore, that's why another reason for us to have local input. So I'm very concerned, Commissioner Evans, when you opened this meeting and said that the recruiter, the consultant in that process, because that then leaves us all out. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight.
A search committee does not mean that the search committee selects the superintendent. The board ultimately selects the superintendent. Joan Moorhead. Joan Moorhead will be followed by John Bliss.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
I stand here as a community member, a grad of the city school district. My daughter was a grad and on the board when she was in the district. My family members have graduated from the district. I am an admissions counselor at Monroe Community College, so I know the challenges our students face. I know firsthand because I'm the point person for the district. I have been at every school. So I don't want to rehash all of that. I'm not here to criticize. I'm here to offer my help. I know what is going on and the problems our children face and what they tell me. So if you need my help, I am here. That's what it's about. The community coming together, getting someone who cares about our children, who's from the area, who's going to stay around longer than 2 or 3 years, who's going to do right by our kids, who put programs in and then see them to fruition and they're successful. That's what I would like to see. Someone who's well-versed in urban education, that would be good, because our kids have a lot more problems than other districts do. So I just wanted to say that, and please, I just want to make an appeal to you as a community member. You know, it's not about me, it's about the kids. I want them to be successful. I tell them all the time, it's not where you start, it's where you finish. If you don't quit, they'll win. But I'm here to tell you today, if we don't quit, they'll win. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moorhead. John Bliss. Thought I saw John earlier.
Good to see you again. Hi. Good to see you again, John. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
Hey, how are you?
Call Maddie. Wow. I don't really have a whole lot to say. I just wanted to share what I thought were some personal qualities you'd look for and then some work experience. Actually, a lot of them are, I think that when you hear people talk, if you hear the same kind of words over and over again, it's going to kind of give you an idea of what the person should be like. I would agree that they have to have, I would prefer somebody that was a very good urban teacher to be superintendent. I really think whoever it is, even though they're way up here, they got to understand the front lines, regardless of who they are. So again, I thought the last person, Joan, I would offer the same thing. I am, you guys, most of you know me. I don't know that you need to spend a lot of money for a search committee. I think that if you got 4 or 5 of the right people that knew what you were looking for, you could find somebody pretty quick. I think the problem's going to be is, are they going to come with a cape or not? Because it's just the position right now is just such a tough one. that it's going to really take a particular individual to take that position, not just on paper, but somebody with this emotional, stamina. I know you wouldn't want to walk down the street like or dislike Brizard. It had to be tough going out in public with your family for fear that, honestly, and actually there's people up there that know what I'm talking about. So I think we need to be careful. But I think there were a lot of good points, and I just wanted to share what I would look for if I was hiring somebody, and I have a little bit of urban teaching experience myself. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Bliss. Is Eric Bettinger here?
Hello again, Mr. Williams. I was a physics teacher at Edison for 2 years, and I suggest to the board that you be the legislators and enact the policies and have the executive who executes those be the superintendent, as opposed to hiring someone who establishes the policies and then reports back to you on only the fluff that he wants to give you so he looks good. Okay, I have some suggestions. I hope that you'll let me give you some observations as well. My suggestions. First, decide upon a policy for students that refuse to bring pencils, paper, a book, notebooks, or archive of their accomplishments to class. This was a huge percentage of Edison students. 2, decide upon a policy for iPod and cell phone. At Edison, our principal got on the announcements every morning and announced the confiscation policy, but in private, rescinded that to the individual teachers. When the students figured this out, they laughed during the announcement, and then they openly flaunted the use of iPods and cell phones during class. My suggestion is that you should have them confiscated for the duration of the week and only give them back to a parent or guardian at the end of the week. 3, enforce academic eligibility for athletic participation. It is a joke. They are not student athletes if they don't come to class. And I had students under 10% attendance, one with 2 kids running on the indoor track team. I don't know, he wasn't a student athlete. Next, eliminate the practice of principals changing grades to up their graduation rates. It makes your diplomas meaningless. Okay? I had a student 20 years old, 9 out of the 20 credits required to graduate. She graduated. Okay? If it's happening at Edison, it's happening elsewhere. Next, I suggest that you have an employee within the district office for the parents that are overburdened and project their anger instead of into parenting onto the district, because I know that there were some parents that I met that continually called with allegations of racism and not getting back to them over and over and over and over and over. You probably need an employee to deal with that. Next, you should mandate minimization of farcical, feel-good, and student needs professional development for the teachers until all teachers have web pages for their syllabus, homework, and grades for their parents to monitor from home. If they're poor, they can do it from the library, okay? This will save a huge amount of time. I called more parents than any other teacher of the 4 high schools at the Edison complex, okay? It can eat up a huge amount of time. This is a big one. I suggest that this district be the first district to request legislation that would deny future welfare benefits to those students that meet a weighted standard of behavior that includes absenteeism, disruption, and disciplinary criteria. Civil rights is not synonymous with a right to deliberately forego your education and then be supported by your productive tax-paying society. Next, and lastly, this is important. I know that times are tough with the money, but students lie. Video recording of the events transpiring in the classroom is essential, not because it will stop ongoing disruptions, claims of racism, and other disciplinary issues, but because it will let you determine the truth of what happened in the classroom. As Mr. Williams knows, today was the last day that I taught last year, when the most disruptive student in my entire class stuck their finger, the end of their finger, into the door that I was closing to prevent a fight from spilling back into my classroom. He sued me in criminal court. Okay, as you will know, I lose my fingerprint clearance. I cannot teach. It took 13 minutes for his jury to come back and acquit me. It was a joke that it even got that far. You have got to start protecting your teachers to some certain extent. Videotaping will do it. I have one other observation I'd like to make. You have schools that are teaching racism. okay? The scenario is two vice principals. One is an active white male under 40. The other is a sedentary black woman, okay? Who eventually gets all the disciplinary cases in that school to ease the concerns, the leadership? They all wind up going to the white male because he's active, okay? If you walk around in the halls, who has a room full of students? Who has 20 students just hanging out in the hallway outside that other vice principal's room? Students that don't want to go to class. Students that are just waiting to be empowered to go in and make up a story about a teacher, okay? These are basic things that you can control.
What does this have with the superintendent's search? Tie that into that.
Okay, the superintendent needs to be able to execute policies that you enact. If you enact or come up with the policies, okay, especially with leadership, this reminds me of the situation a couple years ago in Georgia. There was a person that got a job as an armed security guard in a courtroom. She was a 5'2" or 5'3" grandmother. On the way to sentencing, a convict overpowered her, took her gun, shot her, shot the judge. She had the right to the job, but she wasn't good enough for it, okay? It was regrettable, okay? When you have a home ec teacher running an engineering manufacturing high school, they might be a great leader, they might be able to do it, but you need to screen the people coming in, okay?
All right, thank you, Mr. Bettinger. Tim Adams, Tim here. Don Smith here. Good evening, Don.
My name is Dawn Smith, and I'm one of the members
Isn't that
of
Tim back there with the hammer? That's not Tim.
No.
of Rochester Parent Alliance. Parents Have Power, and we just want to suggest that first we need to slow down and take a deep breath. We need to take the search within the county limits because taxpayers do not have the money for a big search. And we need the parents to be involved on a committee with the process of hiring a new superintendent. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Is Glennie Williams here? And then is there anyone else who wishes to speak that has not signed up? Ma'am, yes. State your name and just come up to the podium.
Hi, my name is Megan Delahanty. I'm a parent of 2 students in the Rochester City School District. I'm a little disappointed that there are not more parents here to talk to you about how important this search is. The last meeting I was here, there were over 100 people. We were down in the waiting room here. So I'm a little disappointed with that, but the urgency is still here, and I wish that the room was packed full of people to tell you how important this job is and how this is the opportunity. The district has such an amazing opportunity right now to do the right thing. And the perception of this district is everything in this community. And right now, you have the most amazing opportunity to do right for the kids of Rochester. I've thought long and hard about what to tell you also. It's not rocket science what we need in this next superintendent. I ask that you look at someone in this district who has been a successful teacher, who has been a successful principal, who has been in leadership positions, and you can look at the success. Go talk to the people that person has worked with. How have they done for the student population at that school? What are their interactions with teachers like? How are they respected in the buildings, in the district? Those to me say so much more than all the other things that you will look at, is the relationships that this superintendent can build. It's all about relationships. I remember going to my son's school in the beginning of the year and saying, why is this school working? Because there are schools in this district that are working. The perception is that things are broken. There are things that are working. And the principal said it's all about relationships. It's about knowing the needs of this family and this child and that child and what this teacher needs. It's a difficult job, but we have to find the right person to do it. And I ask that you go in this district and look for someone who has had success at a school and with teachers and with parents, and use that person to go to the other schools where leadership is failing and find out what they can do for those schools. Because we shouldn't have a pocket of schools that are working. We should have all of the schools that are working. And we need leaders, we need principals and superintendents and teachers all on the same page coming together and making parents believe that the Rochester City School District is going to provide an excellent education for their children. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? This gentleman here, and then you, sir. Okay.
First, I want to say thank you for...
And state your name, please.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. My name is Ronald Hall. I have 3 kids in the Rochester City School District. And as far as the search for a superintendent goes, I think we need to look for somebody with strong leadership skills, somebody with tangibles and intangible skills, somebody that's a great communicator. There shouldn't be a period of time to where the superintendent doesn't communicate with various members of the school board and various members of people in our community, because the superintendent is supposed to be somebody of our community that's going to help enlighten our kids. Now, there have been multiple superintendents that come before you that many of you guys on the school board have hired that quite frankly didn't work out for whatever reason and chose to go on to bigger and better things, which is their prerogative. But we need to, we should have the process a lot more transparent than what it is. And we need to have those superintendents be accountable to the community of which they serve and the people of which they serve, which isn't happening. Now, as far as somebody from Rochester, somebody not from Rochester, somebody from the city, I really don't think that matters. We need to have somebody that's going to put the kids first, so we can, our goal should be to have a 100% graduation rate. Anything else is unacceptable. And that should be the first stance of which we ask our principals. What are you going to do to ensure, or I'm sorry, superintendent, what are you going to do to ensure that you reach 100% graduation percentage? And all the questions need to lead off of that. We need to go back to making sure that it's about the kids. For whatever other issues that we may have going on with the teachers union president or with other members of the board, all of us are here because of our kids. And if it wasn't for our kids, none of us would be here. So we need to remember that when we're looking to make a selection as far as a superintendent, because this is a very important position. You know, we should all take it very seriously, and the community should have input, positively and negatively, as far as what are we going to do, how are we going to do it, as far as making the issues transparent as possible. Okay, that's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Thank you. Did Tim Adams get here yet? Tim Adams? What about Wallace Smith?
I thought he was next, this guy over here.
Oh, Tim was on the list, and then I'll get this gentleman.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize for being late. Thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. My understanding was Howard Eagle submitted a written statement of what the Education Task Force is looking for. So I'd like to just basically say that's what I'm also interested in. As far as the next permanent superintendent, what I'd like to really see is one with a proven track record of working collaboratively with parents and community, because that's one thing that has lacked historically and has kind of driven this district to the crisis that it's in. That's one of the factors I think that are really crucial to bringing this district around. And I don't really have anything prepared to say other than that. Ditto what I believe most people have probably said here tonight already. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Campbell's just left to go over to an event at school number 12 that starts at 7. So that's where she just went. And just let me go Wallace Smith, and then I'll go to this gentleman here. Wallace Smith was signed up, and then Bishop Tillman. So, Wallace passed. Okay. This gentleman here, come on up, sir. And if you and again, if you can just state your name, and then I'll go to Bishop Tillman.
Good evening. My name is Mark Schrader, and I just have a couple comments, so it'll run less than 3 minutes. Just things I've thought of during the meeting that might add to what's already been said. The first thing that's important to me, and I think to probably everyone in the room, is that the next superintendent have integrity. And integrity to me means that what they do correlates with what they say, so that their actions and their speaking, you always have a sense that the person you hear talking is the person you see acting. The second quality I would see is really accountability, which isn't like, begrudgingly being accountable. It's almost like declaring themselves accountable for how well things are being run. Somebody with a track record of even going beyond the call of duty and being accountable for the success of a project. And it might be someone with project management experience. It might be somebody who's been a leader in another sense, maybe in even a not-for-profit organization in some sense. There's a lot of places where that could occur. Somebody who's really stepped up to the plate, and not because they were assessed as accountable, but because they declared that they were going to be responsible for the success of something. Third is trust. And now I'm going to give you something that somebody who I consider to be an advanced thinker gave me many years ago, a man named Fernando Flores. And he said, trust is an assessment in two domains. One is the domain of effective action, in other words, competence, that you really assess that this person is competent. And the second way that we assess trust is in the domain of sincerity. Somebody can be absolutely competent and yet have what I would call deceptive or, say, socially criminal intent. And you wouldn't trust them on that basis, even though they might be brilliant and they might be very competent. So these words have served me well over the years, and I hope they serve you well in assessing the trust of an individual. I would say that also someone who has the ability to make grounded assessments. This same person once told me, when you ground an assessment, you design the future. In other words, when you have a basis for an assessment and you apply that, then you have the greatest possibility of what you thought or what you're trying to produce actually happen. So somebody who can make grounded assessments and that you actually know what standards they're using in making them. Ability to listen, ability to collaborate, and finally, let me just say one more thing. I don't know all the commissioners here, but I would say that if I wanted to find somebody, I'd want them to have the ability to reason that Alan Williams has. I would want them to have the tenacity of Commissioner Elliott, and I would like them to have the leadership skills of a fictional character named Leroy Jethro Gibbs. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that I missed or overlooked? Mr. Adams, come on up, please. Bishop Tillman, come up, stand up next to the podium so we know that you're next, so I won't keep overlooking you. I'm sorry. All right.
My name is Ricardo Adams. I'm coming up here as a parent. I don't have the answers for you. I just know that I fell through the city school district, and I still feel like I'm more advanced than some kids that are completing it. We're pushing kids through that ain't, we need a superintendent who's going to come in and try to just change that policy. I don't know if it's got to be changed and all, but we're pushing kids through, man, and they have less information than I did, and I only finished 10th grade, but I'm more advanced than kids that are graduating. They're graduating with nothing, man. I honestly don't believe there's a commissioner up here that don't care about kids. I really don't. I don't believe there's not a one of you. But it really needs to be the priority, man. Y'all need to get together and just push back. They're playing shell games. 14 school where I went to is moved all over. It's somewhere else. We playing a lot of games. I mean, we're doing things that just don't make sense, man, to me. Schools are failing. Don't shut them down. That means they need help, need more help. So we need a superintendent who's going to collaborate with the businessmen who do donations to the people in Albany, and who make policies, and we need to make some policy changes in Albany. That's what we need, a superintendent that's going to try to push for that, man, because the way it ain't just in your hands. It's the stuff from Albany. It's not set up for the kids to succeed, man. I take my hat off to you for the RCH, Rochester City School District Pre-K program. But from there, it's all downhill. It's downhill right now. I've been told that I might not even be able to volunteer in some of the schools next year in the kindergarten. The class is going. I want to volunteer because I don't want my kids to fail. There's just, after pre-K, it's downhill, man. I don't have the answer. I'm just asking you, man, just please. I know it's rarely that all 7 commissioners are on the same page on anything. You're different people. But I really believe that if all 7 of y'all get together, man, on the selection of the superintendent, man, I believe you can do the right thing, man. And that's all I'm asking of you, man, as a parent, man. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. Please help them. Thank you, man.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Bishop Tillman.
I appreciate you allowing me to speak tonight. I've been a little under the weather, but I just want to kind of piggyback on what one of Simba Wachanga, the young lion who's grown into an older lion now, Brother Avery Blackman, said. We are moving from symbolism to substance, and I think emotionalism needs to be compartmentalized now, and let us take a look at a serious problem that is dealing with the current, future, and eternal intellect of our youth. I do agree that the district, in keeping step with its policies and procedures, Section 3111, and I like what the paragraph 3 says in the first and the third sentence. Just to reiterate, the board will establish a search committee or hire a consultant to recruit and interview candidates for the position of superintendent. And it goes down to the third sentence there. It says the committee, if not experienced in the recruitment of administrative personnel, will undergo training so that the process may be conducted in an efficient manner. I think this is a window opened, not a door closed. I think this is an opportunity for, if the district decides, if the board decides to hire a consultant firm, that this consultant firm hopefully can be a local one. And even if not, it will be required to temporarily employ members of the community who are unemployed, at least one parent, at least a teacher, at least someone from the faith community, maybe, and these are just suggestions, a person from the NAACP, someone from the fight organization, just to give you an idea of changing the way things are done as far as the search goes. So to have a capable consultant firm that will hire and that will train, since the policy says that the committee can be trained if they don't have the experience, to be trained to search for this person. Now, I've never kept it a secret who I thought the next superintendent of schools should be. I'm looking over there at her right now, but in keeping with step with what's going to be, nothing is going to matter who you pick if, like Brother Avery said, if the parents are not given a rightful place at the table, because then if they're given a rightful place, maybe they can talk to the other parents and then get parents more involved. And then at home, the children can be better prepared to come to class so the teachers can do their job, which is not to raise my child, but to teach my child. And then if the community as a whole can have the ministers who can be trusted once again with our children, and the faith community can be trusted to open its doors instead of just being open on Sunday and Bible class night, to be a place, a safe harbor for the community to come to, maybe after school programs, then if you get that type of superintendent and that type of participation from the community and the parents, I do believe that this is going to be a successful venture. I am not going to look at this as we are going downhill. I don't see any farther we can go. The school district and parents and a whole lot of folks have failed our children. And now it's time for all of us to take inventory and count up the costs. Do we want to succeed? Do we want them to succeed? And do we want them to live? I say life and not death. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Let me thank you all for coming today. Obviously, I've taken tons of notes here from things that I've heard, local, urban community perspective, being able to bridge the home, community, and school, well-versed in urban education. But I think the overall point that I took away this evening is community involvement in the search process. And I think that that's something that the board will definitely deliberate on and definitely report back on how we plan on making that happen. So this is the first of many forums. I know that someone said that they were upset that there wasn't a larger crowd. I'm not. I understand that people are extremely busy, and I never really fault those who don't have the time to come out. Our job is to make as many opportunities for more people to come out. So we'll have more of these forums going forward. This is the first of many in what will be a long process. This is not something that just happens overnight, finding someone to lead the third largest district in New York State. But the comments that were shared here tonight are definitely important, I think, and something that we as a board and as a community can take as we move forward on how we're going to move forward with the search process. I want to thank you all for coming. I'm sure board members may want to stay around to talk to you all individually. I would encourage you to speak to us. I'll be here for a little bit while longer. But I want to thank you all for coming, and we will be meeting many more times over the summer. Thank you so much, and this hearing is adjourned.